got new Fox News polls released this morning, and it shows coronavirus is the #1 issue for voters headed into the 2020 election. More than half of them disapprove of how the president has handled this pandemic. I'm joined right now by the White House's chief of staff, Mark Meadows. He has been leading the administration through this crisis. And Mark, it is good to have you this morning. Thanks very much for joining us. First off, what can you say to your critics who say the president has fallen short in his response to the pandemic?
Well, obviously, any time that we get faced with something that is new and unusual, you actually have to engage. And so this came from China. In the last 4 or 5 months, we've been having to figure out how to provide personal protective equipment, ventilators, making sure that we have hospital beds. And I can tell you, as we look forward, there are a number of things that we're working on to make sure that we have the therapeutics, even as recent as this morning shipments going to Florida and Indiana and other places, to make sure that some of the treatments that are needed in these critical areas are actually happening. And I also can tell you that it's a 24/7 around the clock kind of work. I was on the phone with the president this morning as we were working on some of the responses. You'll see some new initiatives coming out this week as the president is not only leading but will continue to lead and step up in a number of fronts. One of those that you mentioned just earlier, Maria, is about our schools. How are we going to open our schools and make sure that moms and dads don't have to worry about the safety of our children that are going back to schools? And so there will be over $70 billion that this president has already authorized to work with Congress to try to make sure that we not only keep the classrooms safe, but the teachers safe and the students safe. And you'll see a very broad five to six points in terms of what we will be doing in terms of making sure that our schools are safe.
That's really important. Obviously, we are going to have to live with this for a little while before we get the innovation from our pharma sector and a vaccine. Tell me what the president would like to see in another relief package, Mark. Where are we in terms of the relief and the impact on the economy and people's livelihoods?
Well, there's the discussions have just started over the last week or so. We've been having a number of internal discussions over the last couple of months, but as we've started to engage with our Senate and House colleagues up on Capitol Hill, those will start in earnest starting tomorrow, Monday. I know that Leader McConnell and Leader McCarthy will be coming in to meet with the president, and Stephen Mnuchin, who's leading it from our side, to actually start to fine-tune it. So I'd see there's 3 different areas that we're going to make sure of, that we have enough money to make sure that we expedite not only the warp speed as it relates to the treatments that we have, whether it be therapeutics or vaccines, but we also want to make sure that we keep people employed. When you look at the economy and where we need to go with it, we're not going to be shy about making sure that we have protections for the American worker and those that employ individuals. And so you're going to see an additional thrust there. It looks like that new package will be in the $1 trillion range as we've started to look at it, whether it's a payroll tax deduction, whether it's making sure that unemployment benefits continue without a disincentive to return to work. And then bluntly, we're looking at a number of areas to look at manufacturing, bringing some of those critical manufacturing jobs back from overseas so that we're never put in a situation where we have to depend on foreign countries to make sure that we can protect Americans.
And the president has talked about the crime across the country as well. Is there something coming in terms of an executive order on returning law and order to this country?
Well, he's already done a couple of things, but he's working very closely with Attorney General Barr. I can tell you that this week what we're looking at is not only looking at what a lot of people have called the executive order on statues, which he did that, but that's really, the statues are one thing, but it's really about keeping our communities safe. And the president's committed to do that. Some of the unrest that we saw even in the last month or so, but particularly last night and the week leading up to it in Portland. It's just not acceptable when you look at communities not being safe and not upholding the rule of law. So Attorney General Barr is weighing in on that with Secretary Wolf, and you'll see something rolled out this week as we start to go in and make sure that the communities, whether it's Chicago or Portland or Milwaukee or someplace across the heartland of the country, we need to make sure that our communities are safe.
Mark, let me turn to the Russia probe. You did such an excellent job when you were on the Oversight Committee in terms of zeroing in on the origins of the Russia probe. We now know for sure. Lindsey Graham told us this about a month ago, actually, so our audience was aware that the FBI knew that the dossier was just made-up garbage, and the subsource told the FBI agents that, and yet Jim Comey and Andrew McCabe kept on pushing forward, renewing warrants to spy on Carter Page. Your reaction to what we know now, and when are we going to hear from John Durham? Will there be indictments, sir?
Well, I think the American people expect indictments. I know I expect indictments based on the evidence I've seen. Lindsey Graham did a good job in getting that out. We know that they not only knew that there wasn't a case, but they continued to investigate and spy, and yes, I use the word spy, on Trump campaign officials, and actually even doing things when this president was sworn in and after that, and doing it in an inappropriate manner. You're going to see a couple of other documents come out in the coming days that will suggest that not only was the campaign spied on, but the FBI did not act appropriately as they were investigating. It's all starting to unravel, and I tell you, it's time that people go to jail and people are indicted.
It's just unbelievable that for 3 years this president was investigated and investigated again over something that wasn't even true, and the entire country was up in arms about collusion. I mean, you know, I don't hear anything on the other side of the aisle about this wrongdoing, which is just stunning to me.
Well, it is stunning. And here's the interesting thing is not only that it wasn't true, the problem is they knew it wasn't true. And when you know something is not true and you continue the investigation, that's collusion. That's the kind of thing that we must stop. And that's where we need to hold people accountable.
Mark, it's great to have you this morning. Please come back soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Maria.